Welcome to the Accounting Technology Lab, sponsored by CPA Practice Advisor, with your hosts, Randy Johnston and Brian Tankersley.
Welcome to the Accounting Technology Lab. I'm Randy Johnston with my co-host, Brian Tankersley. We'd like to talk to you about Canopy. Now, Brian and I have a long history with Canopy. A point of disclosure, we've done a lot of design work for this company. But you know how it is with all clients, some listen and some don't. And there's things that we talked about that were implemented and things we talked about that weren't. But the product has made pretty good progress and is a very popular practice management platform today. It was started in 2017, so it's about 7 years old. And over time, they've raised about 70 million in capital, right now running about 150 employees with 70 employees in R&D. They're out of the Silicon Slopes, and so down towards Lehigh, as it turns out. Most people just think of it as Salt Lake. But the company has been very focused around practice management, document management, workflow. Plus, they also have a really great tax resolution platform, but that's almost a topic for another day. But the bottom line here, friends, is we want you to understand at the low end of the market, there's a collection of competitors that have come to this conclusion that putting everything together in one platform is a winner. Further, I have never seen in my career as much desire to replace practice management as I have this year. It is stunning. The week that we're recording this particular session, the day we're recording it, I believe I've averaged 5 phone calls per day this week from firms wanting to replace practice management, and a similar number the prior week. Now, I'm just one person. I'm getting calls left and right. I've got open engagements to select practice management. It's a big deal. All right, that's a long rant for me. You usually have a short one, and I asked Brian to tell you about the platform and system. So, Brian, what do our listeners need to know about Canopy?
Well, let me back up here and talk for a second about practice management, because I think one of the big things that is going on with practice management that is not done well with the legacy applications. And by the way, just about all of your legacy applications from the big boys were written, well, there's a couple of exceptions, but just about all of them were written prior to Y2K. Okay. So they are getting a little long in the tooth. The way we manage projects when we did things on paper is quite different from the way we do it in a paperless world. The world has changed and implemented stuff that is similar to CRM. We've implemented electronic signature. Okay. So it makes sense that you would need to change out the plumbing behind your workflows. Okay. And so that's the piece here. But again, they've got the idea behind practice management is that this is going to end up being kind of a firm-wide operating system. And so what Canopy actually offers is going to be tools to do proposals and engagements, document management, workflow, time and billing, and payments. Okay. They've also got insights and analytics on that, as well as client management tools. Okay. The client management in here is somewhat simplistic. Okay. But it's something that works well for tax firms in particular. It is, the name of the product actually was for many years Canopy Tax. And so they are honed in very tightly on tax practitioners. And so this would fit well as well. It fits particularly well for enrolled agents, again, or folks that may have some kind of tax resolution services. The workflow and document management actually was originally designed to address some of those issues, and they've extended it significantly since then. But that's that's kind of what I would say about it here.
Well, Brian, before you
I
leave
love this strategy, the Unclunk Your Accounting Firm. By the way, I think that's a great name.
So, Brian, before you leave that concept, I believe you were the one that came up with the idea of all of the modules inside practice management, and you developed a lot of Venn diagrams. Now, we don't have Venn diagrams to show our viewers and describe to our listeners in today's session, but the idea here is that you have time and billing and workflow and document management is your three primary systems, but you also have other features like due date monitoring and portals. And a lot of these systems are now adding payments and they're adding proposals, engagements. When you first came up with those diagrams, Brian, I think it was approximately 5 years ago, it was like a brilliant bit of work. And you and I went back and forth on lots of ways to show those diagrams. And, we wound up with a simple VIN saying that it was the best we could do because we wound up with too many petals on a flower is almost what it wound up looking like.
And we actually used a flower petal design because it was the only thing that could do four simultaneous intersecting things with differing numbers in there. And the problem again with practice management is what is it? And again, if I'm because I take demos on all these products just like Randy does. We actually take demos together so we can both be up to speed on what's going on. But I will tell you that one of the first questions I always ask is, okay, what does practice management mean to you? Okay, because there's practice management centered around selling, there's practice management centered around scheduling, there's practice management centered around billing, there's practice management centered around time tracking, or document management or portal, or there's just so many, or PBC lists. I mean, there are so many workflows surrounding practice management, and I think it's important for you to figure out what it is that as you look at the products. I would say almost if I might actually take about 10 dimensions of products, and I would rank the products on a 1 to 10 basis for your needs if I was doing a selection engagement, just because I think that there's not a perfect solution for everything. Okay, so everything is going to have compromises you have to make. But when Randy talks about this Venn diagram, the Venn diagram is pretty complete for Canopy. They've got a pretty good set of tools for most of the major needs that people have. And I'll
Yeah, so Brian, kind of coming down the path a little further on your comment, because I'm actually doing practice management selections right now. I know you're involved in some too. I'm using a grid of over 100 features when I score these products. And usually what I try to do for most firms is filter it down to 3, 4, 5, 6 that we're going to look out of the 53 in the marketplace as of today. Now, yeah, how could you possibly take all those apart? It's hard. We live, eat, and breathe this stuff, but as a practitioner trying to run a firm, it's hard to get through that. So that's number one. Number two, you were absolutely right because you were naming all sorts of feature sets and the workflows and so forth. But what's most important to you is the biggest question, because all of these products do some of everything. Few of them do any one thing super well. And, the whole idea of having a single operating system for the firm is really what many of these all-in-one practice management products are trying to do. Will they get there? I don't know. We could go back to some of the earliest ones, and we're not going to talk about those today. But when I think about what's important, you got to figure out what's important to you. And that's how I'm trying to filter most of these right now.
And I have to say that I think picking practice management, accounting platform, tax software, this is very much like getting married. Okay, Randy, I know you and Pam have been married for over 40 years. My wife Jeanette and I have been married for over 30 years. And I just have to tell you folks that I think practice management is analogous to a mate in that it's something you're going to do your practice with. You're going to do life with this thing. Okay. And so you need to make sure that it has what you want and it doesn't have too much of what you don't want, and that you can live with it for the rest of your life. Okay, because things are going to change in your firm. Is it going to meet what you need? Is it something that's okay now that's not going to work for you in 10 years when things change? Again, I think you've got to A, pick the right solution, and B, be committed to it once you pick it, unless it just absolutely can't work. Okay. Because I think you've got to commit your workflows to it. You've got to commit the way you work. You've got to commit to the processes and the things your staff people do and the things you do and the way you deal with clients. And I think it is very much like that, picking that mate you're going to do life with, because there is a whole lot of joy and a whole lot of misery that can happen if you make the right or wrong decision.
So, with that in mind, I am going to take two downsides here on Canopy and call them out with intent. One of the things that was never good in this system was the way the time and billing worked. The reporting based on that was also tough, although they have an add-on module, Client Insights or something, I think it's called. But the product was revised mid-year of 2024. In July of 2024, the system was restructured. So if you've looked at the product in the past and time and billing didn't work, well, you were right. It didn't really work in the past. A lot of people have made it work, but there's a lot of niggles, as they would say in the UK, to work around that stuff. I think most of those are worked out. Not all, but most are worked out. That's number one. Number two, like other um, venture-backed organizations, they have sales metrics that they have to hit, and their sales teams are very aggressive. We see that at NetSuite. We see it. I won't name a whole bunch more, but I can name the companies that are very aggressive at sales. So you need to make sure that you're ready to make a decision, because you will figure out right away a lot of these practice management products are currently backed by venture. And because of that, they have very aggressive sales teams. And as soon as you come up on the radar, they want to win the deal so you won't buy something else.
And the thing about that is that there are too many practice management solutions right now in the market. 53 or whatever it is you're tracking, Randy, is too many.
Yep.
15 or 20, I think, is probably about the right size for the market for the different segments. Maybe a little more than that, but I think there's going to have to be some consolidation in the long term.
Yeah.
So,
And your earlier comment, Brian, many of the products that are sold were designed before the year 2000. They're 25 bloody years old, and they're still being sold and pushed. And, one of the better or first all-in-one designs was designed in 2006 and 7. Even it's 20 years old. So these modern systems like Canopy that are only about 7 years in, it usually takes about 4, 5, 6 years for a product to get enough depth to be usable. Competitor at the high end, Carbon, is kind of in that ballpark, for example. They've been at it 8 years, if I recall correctly. So understand, we're not trying to kick anybody here in these comments. We think Canopy as a system is a good practice management system, but by repeating the point, not every feature is the best. This is, it's got a lot of good things in it and it's got some bad things in it. And there is no magic bullet, no single solution that does everything, or Brian and I would recommend it to you. So there's too many competitors, but this is one of the better ones.
And I'm going to say that it's somewhat analogous to the size vehicle, to the kind of vehicle you have. Okay. I like my Forerunner because I go up to the mountain and I go to the middle of nowhere. Randy drives a lot on flat land between Wichita and Hutchinson Airport, at the airport in Wichita and Hutchinson. He's got a Mustang and he can set land speed records. You may have heard some of the sonic booms he makes on the highway to Wichita. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. My wife drives a Fiat 500 convertible. And the reason she does is because she can make a parking place anywhere because it's a little golf cart. Okay. On the other hand, I have friends that have 6 kids, and guess what they drive? A big, massive SUV that's half the size of Utah. And so I want you to understand here that just like there are different cars for different needs in the different stages of life, there are different products that meet the different stages of practice that firms are in, the different kinds of practice they're in. So if you're into value pricing, the time and billing problems that some folks have had with the past versions of Canopy may not matter if you're going to do value pricing. If you're a no timesheets person, you party on. Okay. On the other hand, if you're a law firm and you live and die 6 minutes at a time, this isn't your solution. Okay. And that's okay. All right. Because there's, just like spouses in cars, there's the right one for everybody. Okay. And so we encourage you to go out and figure out what the right one is. Okay.
So thanks for the interrupt on that, Brian, because I thought those discussion points were important for our listeners, whether it was related to Canopy or any other practice management. So their pricing and packaging is actually interesting to use on the website, but for most of you, you're almost certainly going to wind up in the Pro Edition. And the Pro Edition slider has some limits because, in effect, they're going to force you to call for pricing once you get above about 10 users. But you price document management, workflow, time and billing all separately. The number of contacts that you have is kind of sliders. So they've got this kind of sliding scale to get to your quote. But I know you can go to the website and do your own levers. Do be a little cautious because you'll be tracked when you're on the website. You know, in the old
Great place
days,
to use your Gmail account.
it is a great place to use your alternate account. I agree. So in the old days, we used to talk about Canopy as being about $50 per user per month. That is not the way it prices out today. By the time you put all of the pieces together, it's a lot more likely to be in the $70 per user per month range. But I am not here to quote pricing on this particular product because it varies by your mileage, your number of clients, your documents, and so forth.
And I'll say that it also solves more than just the practice management role. It solves the document management role, the workflow role, the some of the portal role. And so that's one of the things I think you've got to watch out for here, is because you may look at that and go, like here, this is a quote that's 500 contacts and 10 users, and this is their slide. It's 1085 a month, so that's $100 a user, 108.50 a month per user. But remember that it's also your DMS, it's also your portal, it's also your workflow and time and billing tool. Okay, so the point here, I guess, is that that Venn diagram becomes more important when you're pricing these things out, figuring it out. Now, I've always said that the most expensive thing you ever bought was software that you bought exclusively based on price. Okay, because this fit is important. But as you're thinking about this fit, I don't want you to again, that's one of the reasons why I like you to rank it on a 1 to 10 basis for different dimensions of the things that are important to you, because I think you've got to decide, are you ready to make this kind of commitment, change out this many systems, or are you going to use this as a standalone piece where you use something else for document management workflow? Maybe if that's the case, maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't. Okay, so I think this evaluation of the different components and what you're going to use and what you're not going to use is one of the most critical things, and so many people don't do it.
Yeah. So, friends and listeners, we have philosophy. Brian and I have been talking about it over the last 2 years. I know it started in 23, possibly in 2022. Less is more. When we talk about other products like BillQuick Core or Canopy or TaxDome or Firm 360, or how many do you want me to name? Normally, what we're trying to get you to do is buy fewer products. It's one of the reasons that I've been an admirer of Zoho One for so many years. It's one purchase and you get everything that you could need literally in the platform. And so less is more has been a mantra that I've been on for a while. We think firms and small businesses, maybe businesses of all sizes, have bought too many products trying to solve problems by putting band-aids on them instead of getting a pair of gloves and getting the right solution. So when we talk about these products, you will want to get a good feature fit. You will want to think about pricing.
Now, one thing they're doing that is interesting is they have some AI generated content, so you can actually use this. This is actually something that I actually picked up at the mashup that we had with the 40 under 40 with the thought leaders that CPA Practice Advisor did in June. One of the practitioners said, AI is the best for writing emails to people that you're mad at, because it will just do it where you will just make your life shorter and more and less pleasant by doing it. And so they've actually got a functionality in here where they're actually doing that to integrate AI into the different tools.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting conclusion on that. So, Brian, any other closing key thoughts on Canopy?
I think this is a product, again, that is It's one of 50 in the space. Okay. But it's old enough to have the depth of features that a lot of other products don't have, but it's not so old that it's a legacy tool. Okay. One of the reasons, by the way, one of the reasons we always say you want to get something that's been around at least 5 years is that all these startups and especially VCs run things according to a book called The Lean Startup. And the concept behind the Lean Startup is the minimum viable product. Okay. And that is a product with the least number of features that can be sold to anybody so that they can then get in and get customer feedback to drive the development going forward. Okay. Now, Canopy did this. Okay. 7 years ago, but they've had enough feedback and enough iteration now that it's a fairly mature solution. And for the right firm, for the firm that wants to practice this way and have workflow run this way and everything, it could be the right solution. It might be your firm, it might not, but I encourage you to check it out.
Okay, what an interesting comment, Brian, because you also have learned in this year, one of my least favorite phrases has become minimal viable product. I've known about it for years, but I'm an old hardcore programmer and I want the bloody things to work. I want them to do everything that I need, just not a portion of what I need. And that's a great comment on the maturity in this particular platform. Now, Brian and I spend a fair bit of time trying to pick the right content for our episodes with you. Sometimes we break things up, like we've done with Microsoft Copilot and ChatGPT as an example. Canopy could have easily had 2, 3, 4, 5 sessions on the different features. So we want you to understand it's a broad product that we tried to cover in this session. It is a good company and a good product. One of the options we think for good all-in-one practice management. We appreciate you listening in. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. We'll be back next Saturday with a new episode of the Technology Lab from CPA Practice Advisor. Have a great week.